Chicago and Dr. Lee for inviting me here. Hopefully will not bore you. A lot of people may not remember if you just said December 8th, 1980. Probably some weren't born at this point in time. But I think it's a date that's similar to other dates, such as the assassination of JFK, man landing on the moon. People know where they were on December 8th, at least in New York. Now, I'm going to break this down a little bit to, we know the when, I'll take you through the where and the who, and then go through the evening. This right there. This is obviously John and Yoko in front of the Dakota apartment. This is on 72nd Street in Central Park West in west side of Midtown Manhattan. This is what it looked like the next day. And this is what the street outside Roseville Hospital looked like that night. 9th Avenue is jammed, cars can get through it. And I think it bespeaks of the notoriety and popularity of John Lennon. Now, this is the Roseville Hospital. I say the Roseville Hospital because that's what we always said. There is no other imitations. This has changed a lot and really no longer exists as a corporate entity now. It is now Mount Sinai. But at the time, it's almost where I grew up. My father had worked there as a real doctor. He was a general internist, worked there from 47 to 74. For those that watch Seinfeld, okay, in the early half of the shows, when they had to go to the hospital, they'd pull up and there'd be this courtyard around. And that was the ambulance courtyard at Roseville Hospital. Again, that no longer exists since that part of the building was torn down, but that's where this sort of starts. And just on a historical note, Roseville Hospital is steeped in surgical history. It's where Charles McBurney made his point for appendicitis, and also later on where William Halsted got addicted to cocaine before he was brought down to Johns Hopkins and detoxed with morphine. So it's a lot of good history there. And if you're looking at this, so we can do the map here. Oh, nope, let me go, can I go backwards? Yeah. This is where the Dakota apartment is. This is Columbus Avenue. Go down Columbus Avenue. There's Roseville Hospital. So it's a pretty much straight shot down Columbus, about 13 blocks away. Now, there's been some contention that I'll talk about later on about who was there that night. Well, I was. So were Barb and Dee. These are the two ER nurses, one evening, one night shift. And they were there. Barb had actually come in early. They sort of chit-chat for a while. They're good friends. They're still good friends today. But they were there that night. Also, Dr. Stephen Lynn. Stephen Lynn was actually my chief resident when I was an intern. He did a year of ER medicine, which at the time I think was just becoming a specialty, and then came back as essentially the first ER director at Roosevelt and stayed there for 30 plus years. Richard Marks was a general surgeon trained in vascular surgery with DeBakey for a year. Came back as a general vascular surgeon, one of the youngest attendings for a long time at Roosevelt, and participated in this sort of randomly. The next person is Alan Weiss. Now, I personally did not know the connection to all of this with this gentleman. Alan Weiss was a ABC reporter who was actually injured in Central Park in a motorcycle accident. He was injured, not badly damaged. He was on a stretcher outside the trauma room in the ER that night. He was the one that put two and two together and realized that it was John Lennon who was shot and not doing well. And he was the one that called it into his office at ABC News, and this was a conduit between him and Howard Cosell. The famous interruption of the Monday Night Football game announcing the death of John Lennon. The other people I'd like to thank the New York City Police, particularly the 20th Precinct, or as they would say, the 2O, who were there. They were serving as an ambulance that night. And also, parenthetically, they were just there all the time, hanging around the ER and watching over the nurses as they went back and forth through the apartments, and just a good group of people. Timeline. Roosevelt, as I said, is a surgical resident. Was a third-year resident, about halfway through, it being December. It was an every other night program. So I had a 50-50 chance of being on call that night, and I was actually in the hospital. Usually, I forget, doing a consult. And I get a page somewhere after 10 that Dr. Halleran to the ER stat, which is unusual because we all had beepers. Usually they would beep you. You'd call the operator tell who beeped you, and you call them, and that's how things work. This was a little different. So I called the ER and I said, gee, what's going on? We said, we have a gunshot wound to the chest coming in. Period. That's a quote. It was not, we have John Lennon coming in. It was, we have a gunshot wound to the chest. So as a resident, you say, yay, this is good stuff. We're going to do something. So I got down to the ER, and by the time I got down there, I said, where is this person? They go, well, he's not here yet. Went into the trauma bay, which is room 115 in the ER, took down the open thoracotomy tray, had it open on the desk there, had the bed in the middle of the room, and we waited. Then the sirens come in, and what was different also was that he was not brought in by ambulance. He was brought in by police car. He's put on a stretcher. Again, the policeman, who I would think knew who he was, didn't say anything. We wheeled him in. He was wearing his leather jacket with his fur collar, blue jeans, T-shirt, and we jumped on him. I mean, if you've been involved in these kind of things, particularly back in the 80s, it's like a rugby scrum. Someone's putting in lines, someone's intubating. Being the senior resident at the time, we cut off his clothes, throw it in a pile. He's got what looked like 4 gunshot wounds to the chest in the front and 3 coming out the back. And I'm going to get back to that at the end, but that's what it looked like. He was unresponsive. They said he had been moaning in the car on the way down. So the only play was to open up his chest, which I did. The heart itself was intact. We started open cardiac massage. It looked like a lot of the blood was coming from under the left clavicle, which was hard to expose at that time. And, you get into a rhythm. Get the lines going. Someone is running for blood, pumping his heart. And about maybe 15 minutes or so into this, someone says, hey, that looks like John Lennon. I said, couldn't possibly be. I'm having my doubting Thomas moment. And I said, no. And they start going through his clothes. They pull out his wallet. There's his Gold American Express card, John Lennon. And I had my OMG moment. Around the same time, Richard Marks, the surgeon I mentioned, who lived on the west side, was coming home from dinner with his wife, Ronnie, had seen the cops put Yoko Ono in the back of a car and all the sirens, and he just dropped his wife off, and he came in on his own accord. And around this time when I'm saying, no, it possibly can't be John Lennon, he walks in and says, yes, it is. So Mark, we call him Dick Marks, he was putting some lines in. We're still doing massage, really not getting much of any results. And I had been criticized over the years by some colleagues saying, well, why did you even do it? Well, why not? I mean, it's if we hadn't done it, I think we'd be criticized as well, so I think you'd rather do something than not. And we worked on him. Now, once they found out it was John Lennon, they called Dr. Lynn, because he was the ER director, to come in. And we were well in it, almost near the end of the resuscitation attempts. He comes in, observes things, and after a while, I think around if it's 11:15 or so, we called it and pronounced him dead. And that night, a couple of things. One, we sewed him up. The medical examiner came up and picked up the body that night. Dr. Lynn asked me to, if I would want to go out with him to talk to the press. I did not. I refused. I declined. I wanted to go home and hide under a rock. And for the next 3 days, I couldn't watch TV, listen to radio, or read a newspaper because it was all about John Lennon, and I felt like I had let him down. I know the title of this conference is To Save a Life. I think that's what we all try to do, but as I know, and as sure as some as you know, it doesn't always go that way. And I was lucky, because I could go home and sulk. The nurses that were there had to finish their shift. Show you how wonderful people are. As they sometimes went out of the building, we were all sort of blood splattered, and they were offered, several $100s for their bloodied clothes, which they declined. So after that, life went on, and I graduated my general surgery program. I went to Grand Rapids, Michigan for a year of colon rectal fellowship training, and ended up in Syracuse, New York, where really nothing happened. Besides 4 kids and a job, that was enough to keep me occupied. And then, as time went on, about 30 years, this would be about the 30-year anniversary of Lennon's death. I was in the kitchen, and I was looking at the TV. And any John Lennon story, I usually turn off. I sort of know the story. And there was a picture of Dr. Lynn making motions of pumping the heart, being interviewed by I think it was CNN. And again, it was about every 5 years you'll notice that some news organization will do an update on the death of John Lennon. And this, I think, was the 30th year. And I was, in all fairness, I was a little annoyed. Steve was my chief resident. I had him for, as an intern, and I knew him when he was a chief in the ER. And it didn't happen that way. So over lunch later in the week, I was talking to one of our people in the marketing division at the hospital, and I was grousing, and she was, "Oh, that's a great story. We should write that up." And they wrote it up in the little local hospital newsletter. It made the local Post-Standard, which is our newspaper in Syracuse, and that was it. But it was also now out there in print and in the Ethernet. And another few years go by, and this happens. And by the way, I have no disclosures, but for those that have 90 minutes of their life they could waste, they can watch this. It's almost a documentary of what happened that night. But 2 producers, Gabe and Rafael Francisco, decided they would do a movie about John Lennon. And movies have all been done, books have been written, but they wanted to look at what happened in the ER specifically. That was their focus. So they tracked down people to talk to, and they talked to Dr. Lynn. And they basically based their script around what he was saying. And if you look at his reports over the years, and he was there for the 5th year, the 10th year, the 15th year, it's the same person being interviewed, his story often morphed. And this is what they were saying. And they asked him, "Well, anybody else there, by the way, besides you?" And he goes, "Yeah, the nurses, but they don't give interviews," which is true. Barb and Dee were mum, never gave an interview. But for some reason, these guys got to him, and they gave an interview. And they said, "Wait a minute, this sounds different from what we've been told." And they said, "Well, yeah." And they go, "Anybody else was there?" And they go, "Yeah, Halleran." They go, "Well, where is he?" "Well, he's up in Syracuse." So they tracked me down there, gave them an interview, and they said, "Gee, your story sounds like what the nurses say." And I go, "Well, yeah, that's sort of how it happened. That's what I remember." So they had to change the script. Now, part of this, and this is kind of was kind of fun because it gave me an opportunity to actually to be in a movie. The four of us were there for a cameo shot, and to hang out with some actors and stuff. And the only thing I realized was I'm not going to quit my day job. But it was fun while it lasted. The other thing that prompted was Howard Kurtz does the media buzz for Fox News, and he interviewed all of us. He interviewed myself, Barbara and Dee. We also tracked down the nurse anesthetist who intubated him that night, and he also interviewed Dr. Lynn. Very, I think, good interview. And it's you can Google it, but it's for those that are interested in the Lennon story. But it's a pretty comprehensive interview. So the controversies. Well, before I forget the 1A, there was a paper I had written. I wrote a summary for the medical examiner of what was done in the ER. And I was looking at my note the other day, and one of them describes a lateral in and out here. Again, up until a couple of years ago, I would have sworn that he was shot in the chest, in the front, and out the back. And that's, I'll get there in a minute, but that's not really how it happened. But was also interesting, despite several FOIL requests, the original ER note, and those were the days when you had the triple non-carbon required papers. You had the white copy, the pink copy, the yellow copy. And that had a diagram front and back with my signature you could still read at the time. That's never been found. That's never come to light. Not that it really matters, but it's interesting that I would think at least the DA's office would have a copy, but apparently we could not get one. As for who was there and when, I think that's pretty much been proven with the documentation by the nurses. Steve Lynn was there, but he was halfway through or more than towards the end of the resuscitation. Now, as far as the mechanisms of injury, as I said, I would have sworn that he was shot in the front and four in the front and three out the back, but that's not the case. I've also been interviewed by a couple of British TV people who like this kind of stuff as well. And a couple of years ago, they gave me a copy of the autopsy report. I had not seen it up until then. And I love it when they gave it to me. They said, "We got this legally, just don't show it to anybody." So I said, oh, interesting. And that's where I saw my handwritten note and also the report by Dr. Elliot Gross. And he was shot in the back 4 times with 3 exit wounds out the front. And that is, let me just go over this here. Now, the other thing, besides just a projection of the, this is a 7-page report, and this is just some of the summaries here. They measure, I don't know if it does forensics, but they measure from the left heel to the bullet, and they track the course of the bullet wound. And that alone tells you the mechanism, but also, oops, sorry, I'm going back. Where am I? Okay, there's a, they found a bullet inside his leather jacket. One of the ones that had gone through was stopped by his leather coat and was found in his leather coat. There's one person, again, another one of the 2 British services that had interviewed me. One likes to think that he was shot in, likes to believe there's some kind of conspiracy going on, and believes that he was shot in the front. And I had spoken to him, and they said, no, he really was shot in the back. And he goes, well, the nurses say he was shot in the front, so I'm going to go with that story. So I don't know what conspiracy nonsense he's going to try to invoke, but he wasn't. And the bullet in the jacket, could that be toggled around, taking it off? Possibly. But also, I'll go back. Sorry. There is a bullet that is located by his trachea. So obviously you can't be shot in the front and have a bullet lodge in your trachea. He was shot in the back and one lodged in his trachea. One went through and stuck in his coat. He was shot by a 38 Charter Arms that had, it's a revolver with only 5 bullets, missed once, and 4 went, hit him 4 times. The ultimate cause of death, I'll get this right someday, is really the left subclavian artery had been injured, and that's where he had essentially exsanguinated. And despite our best efforts at the time, which listening to some of the lectures today probably would be malpractice today, we didn't succeed. One more. And again, I said the Now and Then song I was going to mention as well, because the influence this gentleman had on my generation, and I think even subsequent generations, was enormous. Again, with the AI-generated recording of Now and Then, he's still making music 50 years later and 43 years after his death. And as they say, one can only imagine what he would have done. But I thank you for your attention. But again, I think some of the key points was that we did not know who he was. I like to think we would have treated him the same if we did, other than I would have had more trepidation. But ignorance is bliss. But it happened to be at the wrong place at the wrong time. But I was there, and that's how it went down. Thank you.